The studio lights glowed softly over the New York skyline. It was a Thursday evening, and the view was live. Cameras panned across the excited audience, faces lit with anticipation. Rihanna, the global superstar, was backstage, adjusting the collar of her black blazer. Her diamond-studded earrings sparkled under the dressing room lights. But her expression was unreadable, focused, calm. But distant. She wasn't here to sing. She wasn't here to promote an album. She was invited to speak about her humanitarian work and her recent partnerships with the United Nations. Her foundation, HopeRise, had been instrumental in rebuilding schools in Haiti, supporting hospitals in Ghana, and aiding refugees in Sudan. This was supposed to be a light segment, celebrity meets global impact, something inspirational. But Rihanna had learned to read the room long ago. And this room didn't feel right. 2 hours earlier, one of the show's producers had gently asked her to keep things light. He said the world was tense already, and this was an entertainment show. No politics tonight, okay? Just good vibes. The producer had smiled. Rihanna had nodded, but inside, her instincts had sharpened. The world was tense. Just this week, confidential diplomatic cables had been leaked, showing years of quiet deals between the U.S. State Department, Caribbean officials, and major financial players like the IMF. The document suggested that natural disasters in smaller island nations had been exploited loans handed out, then used to trap governments in impossible debt cycles. The headlines screamed of corruption, but few dared name names. Rihanna had. She had spoken about it in Geneva. She had hinted at it in her social media posts. And now, here she was, sitting on an American talk show, expected to smile and entertain. Backstage, co-host Joy Behar was reviewing her cue cards. She had expected the usual list charity work. Maybe a playful comment about the Met Gala, but just minutes before going live, the executive producer, a tall man with sharp glasses, slipped her a fresh card. "This just came in. Use it if things get dry." Joy glanced down. The card read, "Rihanna's ties to General Nduka. Public image versus hidden alliances. Ask her directly." Viewer engagement expected to spike. Joy's eyebrows twitched. She looked up at the producer, who didn't smile. "Is this verified?" she whispered. He simply said, "It's already online." Then he turned and walked toward the control room. The band started playing. The show was live. Out on stage, the women laughed and joked with the audience. Then came the moment. "And now," said co-host Sunny Hostin, "please welcome an icon singer, actress, activist Rihanna." The audience erupted. Rihanna walked onto the stage, her face glowing under the lights, but her eyes scanning everything. She smiled politely, waved, sat down. There was applause, chatter, and compliments about her recent Fashion Week appearance. They began with her foundation. "Yes," Rihanna said. "We've expanded HopeRise into 7 more countries. Our focus right now is education for displaced children and trauma response training for frontline nurses." The audience clapped again. Joy Behar smiled. "That's wonderful, Rihanna. You've always been someone who uses your platform for good?" Rihanna gave a small nod. "I try. These aren't issues that go away when the cameras stop. We have to stay in it." The conversation danced for a while. Climate change, girls' education, mental health. Then Joy looked down at the new cue card. She hesitated for only a second. She smiled wider than usual. "Rihanna." She began placing the card casually on her lap. "I want to ask you something important. And I know our viewers are wondering too." Rihanna tilted her head slightly. The air in the studio seemed to thicken. Joy leaned in just a little. Her voice smooth but pointed. "So, Rihanna, do you still stand by your friendship with General Nduka even after what just came out?" The words dropped like stones in water. The audience didn't clap. They didn't laugh. Rihanna's smile froze. Her eyes locked on Joy's, searching, calculating. "What exactly are you asking me?" She said softly. Joy blinked. "I mean, There are reports now, leaks, documents, connecting your foundation to Nduka's regime. People are saying, you mean the dictator responsible for burning refugee camps in northern Benin? Rihanna interrupted. Her voice calm but icy. Joy faltered. I'm just reading what's out there. Rihanna leaned back, her fingers laced tightly in her lap. My foundation sent medical aid to famine victims. We don't vet them based on who bombs their villages. We send help when people are dying. There was a murmur in the audience. And just for clarity, Rihanna continued. That so-called report you're quoting, it was leaked 2 hours ago. Strange how your producers had it ready on a card before the story even hit mainstream media. Joy opened her mouth, then closed it. The other hosts looked stunned. The cameras kept rolling. Rihanna looked toward the crowd, then straight into the camera lens. You brought me here to smile. You didn't ask about those cables. You didn't ask how much the IMF profited off hurricane relief. But you brought this up because the truth makes people uncomfortable when it wears diamonds. Silence. The control room whispered into headsets. A producer signaled for commercial. Rihanna didn't flinch. The screen went to black, but the world had already seen ... the moment the show cut to commercial. Chaos unfolded behind the scenes. The audience, still silent from Rihanna's sharp on-air remarks, began whispering nervously as upbeat music played over the studio speakers. The stage manager waved frantically to signal that they were off the air. Producers clustered in corners, talking into headsets. Joy, Behar, pale and tense, quickly pulled off her mic and walked off stage without a word. Rihanna stood still in her chair, her expression unreadable. A junior producer rushed toward her with a clipboard. Ms. Fenty, we'd like to steer the next segment back to the foundation work. Lighten the tone. She turned slowly toward him. You set me up, she said. Don't pretend. You didn't. The producer stammered, We didn't expect that reaction. Rihanna rose from her chair. Her heels tapped sharply on the polished stage as she walked calmly but purposefully backstage. Her publicist, Kayla, met her. Halfway, who gave them that question? Rihanna asked. Kayla was already typing furiously on her phone. It wasn't in the pre-show list. I'm trying to track it. Wait. She stopped. It's everywhere. The clip's already up. They leaked it before the segment even ended. Clip, Rihanna asked, the 30-second version. Just you defending Nduka. No context. They cut out everything after. Rihanna's eyes narrowed. She snatched the phone and watched the video. The moment Joy asked about the general. Her own tense response cut short just before she explained the aid work or questioned the producers. The caption read, Rihanna defends brutal dictator. Fans in shock. It had over 2 million views already. Who's pushing it? She asked. Kayla nodded toward the hallway. Sporty from Stream Now Media. Their socials are first. They're syndicating it through all the blue check accounts. This isn't an accident. Rihanna exhaled through her nose, forcing herself to stay calm. This wasn't just a smear, it was an operation back in the control room. Producers were shouting over each other. The executive producer, Frank Mathers, watched the viral counter tick up on his monitor. We'll hit 10 million by tonight, he said quietly. Get her back on stage for the last block. Damage control? A tech assistant nearby muttered. We just hung her out to dry. Frank didn't answer. Meanwhile, Rihanna stood in front of her dressing room mirror. Her reflection stared back with quiet defiance. Do I go back out there? She asked. Kayla hesitated. If you don't, they'll say you ran. If you do, they'll try to corner you again. Rihanna's jaw tightened. Then I'll corner them first. 3 minutes later, the studio returned from commercial applause, though softer this time. The hosts smiled, but tension was thick. Joy was still off stage. Sunny Hostin picked up. Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with Rihanna. Before she could finish, Rihanna leaned into her microphone. I'd like to ask a question, she said. Sunny blinked. Of course. Rihanna looked straight at the camera. The documents Joy quoted those were leaked today. But your producers had them before they were public. That tells me someone wanted this to go viral before I even walked on this stage. There were quiet gasps from the audience. I run a foundation that brings food, water, and medical care to people in crisis zones. Sometimes those zones are run by bad men. That doesn't mean we support them. It means we help the people they're hurting. She looked down at her hands. But here's what I've never said publicly, because I didn't want the backlash. The studio was silent. 2 years ago, I found out a U.S.-funded contractor was inflating aid prices in Ghana, charging $90 for blankets they bought at $8. My team traced the paperwork. The money passed through 3 fake nonprofits before hitting a bank account in the Cayman Islands. One of those nonprofits shares a board member with StreamNow Media. Same company pushing that clip of me right now. Gasps again. I wrote a letter. I gave it to a UN rep. I'd never heard back. I was warned not to interfere with official partnerships. That was the first time I realized charity isn't just kindness. It's business. Sometimes war is more profitable than peace. The room was frozen, no teleprompter, no notes, just truth. They didn't want me here to talk about children, she said. They wanted a scandal, something clickable, something to distract from what really matters. The control room was panicking. The feed director gestured wildly, signaling whether to cut the stream or not. Frank Mathers stood silent. Cutting her now would confirm it all, he whispered. On stage, Rihanna gave one final look to the camera. The story isn't about me. It's about the people we forget while we argue about politics on TV. The screen faded out, but not before viewers around the world had seen her eyes, sharp, controlled, and completely done playing the game. The viral explosion didn't wait for the next day. Within an hour of Rihanna's live confrontation on The View, the internet was on fire. Clips of her fiery speech flooded every social platform. But unlike the earlier manipulated 30-second soundbite, full recordings of her entire response now surfaced, posted by audience members who'd been filming on their phones. Hashtag Rihanna Exposed This System began trending alongside hashtag Justice for Africa and hashtag Media Setup. In comments, fans and journalists alike began asking a single question: who leaked the smear? Major outlets like CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera scrambled to confirm the details. Quietly, a handful of investigative reporters began digging into the nonprofit shell companies Rihanna mentioned. Less than 24 hours later, one name emerged across several documents: Behar Crane Strategies, a lobbying firm owned by Joy Behar's husband. That revelation was the crack that burst the dam. Redacted reports linked Behar Crane to 3 USAID contracts in West Africa, each flagged for irregular fund allocation. By morning, journalists were knocking on Joy's door. She didn't answer. At a press conference that afternoon, The View's producers released a carefully worded statement. We deeply respect all our guests and regret any confusion. The questions posed were not intended to ambush or distort Ms. Fenty's message, but the internet wasn't buying it. Rihanna's full response had already amassed over 25 million views. In London, a whistleblower using the handle @JasperFiles posted a 2-minute encrypted video on X. His voice was digitally altered, but his message was clear. You watched a takedown in real time. Rihanna became a threat the moment she connected U.S. defense contractors to failed aid programs. The same networks pushing the smear are tied to congressional lobbying arms. Follow the paper trail. He posted a link. Within minutes, it was mirrored across hundreds of sites. In Washington, that paper trail led to a quiet storm. Senators who had once praised Rihanna's philanthropy suddenly distanced themselves. Press secretaries were instructed not to comment. One leaked email from a senior aide at the State Department said simply, "She crossed a line. Make her radioactive." That same day, Rihanna was scheduled to attend a closed-door fundraiser for international education at the United Nations. When she arrived at the entrance, she was told she had been temporarily removed from the speaker lineup. She didn't say a word. She walked back into her car and sat in silence. Kayla, sitting beside her, whispered, "They're going to try to erase this." Rihanna stared out the window. They already tried. Now we give them something they can't cut. She pulled out her phone and opened her contact list. One name stood out: Noura El-Hakim, an award-winning journalist at Al Jazeera known for her fearless interviews with warlords, exiled diplomats, and fallen politicians. Rihanna texted, ready to speak, but not for clicks, for history. Within the hour, Noura responded, "My studio, Doha, tomorrow." The decision sent shockwaves. Rihanna choosing Al Jazeera over American outlets was a deliberate signal. She wasn't playing defense anymore. She was taking the story global. The next morning, she boarded a private flight to Qatar. With her traveled, encrypted files, foundation records, whistleblower testimonies, and one handwritten letter she had received 2 years ago from a Sudanese nurse who wrote, "Your help kept our hospital open when everyone else gave up. Don't stop speaking." Back in the U.S., the smear campaign grew more frantic. Stream Now Media released a second edited clip trying to discredit Rihanna's claims about Behar. But it backfired. Fact-checkers quickly dismantled it, and Twitter added a warning label: deceptively edited. Meanwhile, hackers under the banner of Free Aid Alliance began leaking internal emails from Behar servers. Subject lines read, "Prep joy for the Africa segment." Rihanna softens left, but could turn hard. Caution: get Stream Now on board for distribution spike. The receipts were undeniable. Back in Doha, preparations for the interview were underway. Al Jazeera's newsroom buzzed with tension. This wasn't just a celebrity profile anymore. It was a political flashpoint. As Noura reviewed the final question list, her producer said, "We just got word the U.S. Embassy may issue a formal objection." Noura didn't flinch. Then they can watch like everyone else. When Rihanna arrived at the studio that evening, she wore no makeup, no jewelry, just a plain navy shirt with the words "Unbought, Unbroken." The camera lights came on. The broadcast opened with war footage. Aid workers, villages, flashbacks of Rihanna at dusty field clinics. Then Noura began. "Rihanna, the world saw you silenced. Tonight, we give you time to speak." Rihanna nodded once. "I'm not here to clear my name. I'm here to name what others keep silent." Back in New York, screens across newsrooms, airports, and universities glowed with her face. The world was watching. The broadcast began with a silence more powerful than words. Across continents, millions tuned in. The Al Jazeera special had been promoted as the interview they tried to stop. It aired in over 40 countries, with real-time translations in Arabic, French, Swahili, and Mandarin. In dim living rooms, university halls, and refugee camps. With flickering generators, K-Pole watched not just because it was Rihanna, but because something in the air had changed. This wasn't a music tour. This was war with a microphone. Noura El-Hakim sat poised across from Rihanna, her dark eyes calm but razor-focused. She didn't waste time. "You're accused of defending a war criminal. You're also accused of being part of a global aid laundering scandal. Let's begin there." Rihanna looked directly into the lens. "I didn't defend Nduka," she said. "I defended the people his regime starved, the mothers we airlifted out, the children we treated for cholera when no one else came. And yes, my foundation worked alongside governments because that's how the system is built. It's messy, it's corrupted. But if I waited for saints to be in power, we'd never save a single life." Noura nodded, then tapped a tablet beside her. "We verified internal memos from the Behar lobbying firm. They knew about your operations. They deliberately framed you using selectively leaked files." "Do you believe this was state-sanctioned?" Rihanna took a breath. I believe the media doesn't move that fast without help. That leak dropped before. The cables were public. Your team verified that the producers had it queued for broadcast hours earlier. Someone wanted me destroyed fast and publicly. That's not an accident. Strategy. Behind the scenes, control rooms across the globe were stunned by the clarity of her voice. There were no handlers, no lawyer statements, just unfiltered, eloquent truth. Noura continued, "What about the accusations that you politicized your foundation?" Rihanna didn't flinch. Helping people is political. Every time we send aid into a zone, we're stepping into power dynamics territories, currencies, influence. They've politicized charity since long before I got involved. The only difference is, I spoke about it out loud. As the interview went deeper, Rihanna unveiled what she called the paper trail of pain. Her foundation's audits, memos, from USAID contractors, redacted emails between U.S. officials and media executives discussing messaging control around African aid stories. One document stood out. An internal directive marked confidential, do not forward. Advising media partners to manage narratives tied to Fenty Foundation following regional unrest. Noura raised her eyebrows. "Did you know they were?" "Tracking your every move," Rihanna answered softly. "I had an idea. When I stopped being useful, I became dangerous." At that moment, the screen flashed a photo behind them. Rihanna, standing ankle-deep in Sudanese floodwaters, holding the hand of a small boy. She looked at it. He couldn't speak. His parents died 2 days before that photo. "A nurse told me he'd stopped responding to sound, but when I gave him food, he squeezed my fingers. I didn't ask if his village supported the wrong side. I fed him." The room was silent again. Then came the moment that changed everything. Noura leaned forward. "We have confirmation that your foundation uncovered suspicious military-grade shipments routed through aid cargo manifests." "Did you report it?" "Yes," Rihanna said. "To the UN Special Rapporteur on Corruption. To the U.S. Ambassador's office, to the press." No one responded. Weeks later, my team was denied permits to enter Ghana. "Do you believe you were blacklisted?" "I don't believe." "I know." A producer backstage whispered into her headset. "This is bigger than we thought." As the interview neared its end, Noura gave Rihanna the floor. "What do you want?" "The world to know now." Rihanna paused. She looked into the camera like she was speaking to each person watching. "You don't have to believe me, but follow the money. Look at who profits when disasters happen. Look at which companies get richer when poor nations collapse. Look at which journalists rise when others are smeared. Ask yourself why someone would try so hard to silence a pop star just for asking who funds the food drop." She smiled faintly. "And remember, when someone gets attacked this hard, it's not because they lied. It's because they told the truth." The screen faded to black. A message appeared. This broadcast was independently funded. No corporate sponsors. No edits. The interview was watched live by over 100 million people. Within the next 24 hours, it was reposted on every major platform, downloaded, subtitled, turned into transcripts, and taught in journalism classes. But in Washington, the reaction was immediate and severe. The State Department issued a statement accusing Rihanna of spreading sensitive, unverified claims that could jeopardize diplomatic trust. One senator went further, calling her a foreign destabilizer. Cable news shows scrambled to frame it. Some painted her as a misguided celebrity. Others began questioning whether she was telling a deeper truth the system didn't want exposed. Joy Behar, now absent from the view, had gone silent. But a leak from inside ABC revealed a bombshell. She had submitted a resignation letter, citing conflicts of conscience. Meanwhile, in the UN, a group of humanitarian delegates submitted a motion for an independent investigation into all aid contracts tied to Behar, USAID, and media-linked NGOs. And in a quiet office in Geneva, a junior diplomat stared. At the memo Rihanna once submitted, stamped and forgotten, he picked it up, walked into his supervisor's office, and placed it on the desk. It's time we take this seriously. Outside, the world wasn't sleeping anymore. The storm Rihanna had unleashed was now a global reckoning. In Washington, late-night emergency meetings were called at the State Department. White House spokespeople were flooded with requests for clarification. A classified memo, later leaked by the same whistleblower at Jasper Files, revealed that senior officials had convened under a crisis designation titled Uncontrolled Narrative Risk, Case Fenty. In the leaked transcript, one undersecretary asked, "Do we have any leverage left?" Another answered, "None that won't backfire." The world believes her now. Meanwhile, in Doha, Rihanna sat quietly in a small guest suite above the Al Jazeera newsroom. The sun was setting beyond the Persian Gulf, the sky stained blood orange. She stared out the window, disconnected from her phone, her team, and the chaos erupting outside. Kayla entered with her laptop. "They're asking for another statement." BBC, NHK, even MSNBC now. They want a follow-up. Rihanna shook her head. "Let them chase. We said what we needed to say." But she knew this wasn't over. Something darker was coming. That night, the Al Jazeera offices were hit by a coordinated cyber attack. Their servers were jammed with millions of fake requests. A separate, more targeted breach attempted to delete the raw footage of the interview. Fortunately, their tech team had mirrored everything to cold storage hours before the broadcast. Then came the next hit. A respected war correspondent from Al Jazeera, who had coordinated with Rihanna's foundation in Sudan, vanished on assignment. His car was found torched in northern Kenya. Inside, a scorched press ID. No body, no blood. Just silence. In a chilling message, an anonymous group posted a blurry image of the correspondent's last known location and the caption, "Some truths must remain buried." The world was watching more closely now, and yet things were beginning to move. Underground. In South Africa, students launched rallies demanding transparency on Western aid funding. In Berlin, protesters stood outside U.S. embassies with signs reading, "The aid was poisoned." In New York, Joy Behar was finally located by reporters. She was seen leaving a private legal office with her daughter, avoiding questions, sunglasses on, head low. When asked if she had been coerced into asking Rihanna the infamous question, she paused just long enough to suggest an answer without speaking. Inside legal circles, whispers circulated. A sealed affidavit may have been submitted to the Justice Department implicating senior media figures, K-producers, and contractors. But it was Rihanna's next move that reignited the fire. She announced a global press conference to be held at the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, not via invitation, via live stream. She dared the world to watch. The buildup was electric. News networks speculated. Governments scrambled and online forums buzzed with questions. Would she name more names? Would she reveal classified documents? Security was heightened. Bomb-sniffing dogs swept the plaza. Swiss authorities, under immense international pressure, tried to minimize coverage, but the digital flood couldn't be stopped. On the day of the press conference, thousands gathered outside the UN building. Some carried candles, others held up images of children in war zones. Rihanna arrived in a navy trench coat, hair pulled back, no jewelry, no entourage. Just Kayla by her side and two plainclothes security officers assigned discreetly by the Swiss government. As she stepped up to the podium, a tense stillness gripped the world. Cameras clicked, drones hovered. She looked up at the journalist, sent straight into the live feed. "I'm not here to protect my reputation. That ship sailed the day they decided to destroy it. I'm here to defend the people they forgot." She paused. "Today, I present documented proof that 3 U.S.-funded defense contractors falsified invoices for humanitarian supplies in 5 African countries. I am submitting those to the International Criminal Court." Reporters gasped. In these documents are itemized bills, inflated costs, photos of spoiled shipments, signatures from officials in the State Department. If the world cares about justice, this is where we start. As she spoke, an encrypted file was released to vetted journalists in real time. The contents were damning. Contracts with Behar, back-channel emails from Pentagon-linked NGOs, even invoices showing bulk food supplies marked as refrigerated that were shipped spoiled, causing deadly outbreaks in refugee camps. Then it happened. Just as Rihanna stepped back from the podium, a security agent near the exit raised a hand to his earpiece. Sniper alert. North Tower, evacuate the perimeter. Panic rippled through the crowd. But Rihanna didn't move. She stood motionless for 5 full seconds as security scrambled around her. Then she turned back to the microphone. If you think fear will stop the truth, you don't know the people you've hurt. Cheers erupted from outside the gates, echoing into the building. A few minutes later, the situation was cleared as a false alarm. Still, the message was received. She was under threat. Later that night, from a hidden location, Rihanna released a short video on her official channel. The screen was dark, just her voice. They will say, I endangered stability. But what is stable about hiding crimes behind charity? What is stable about buying silence from journalists and punishing the ones who speak? This is bigger than me now. This is about all of us. Speak loud, speak clear, let the empire tremble. The video went viral within minutes. Inside the UN building, one diplomat murmured as the feed ended, "This isn't a celebrity scandal anymore. This is a movement." Outside, the crowd didn't leave. They stayed and waited, because something in the air had shifted. And no one, not even the most powerful governments, could pretend it hadn't. The days following Rihanna's UN address unraveled like a thriller script. No one could stop writing. Every hour brought a new revelation, a new leak, or a new crack in the polished wall of diplomatic silence. What had started as a viral moment on a talk show had spiraled into the most explosive humanitarian and political scandal of the decade. In Washington, the Department of Defense denied any involvement with the aid contracts exposed by Rihanna. But internal chaos told a different story. One of the contractors named in the files, North Helix Logistics, quietly erased their website overnight. Their CEO, formerly a Pentagon advisor, resigned without comment. A memo from the National Security Council declared Rihanna a non-state narrative threat, the same classification given to high-impact whistleblowers. Journalists across the globe began revisiting old aid deals. In Nairobi, a reporter traced IMF grants meant for drought relief that had disappeared into offshore accounts linked to a board member of StreamNow Media in Haiti. Nurses remembered unmarked trucks delivering expired medical supplies bearing U.S. government stamps. In Ghana, a survivor from a cholera outbreak recounted how Rihanna's team was the only group that stayed after the UN-backed NGOs packed up early. The lies had been layered for years. She'd torn them open in 1 week. And now the backlash came not through the front door, but through quiet threats, closed doors, and coded warnings. Rihanna's team received a notification her foundation's banking partner in New York had frozen key operational accounts pending a security review. It wasn't a coincidence. Other allies began receiving audit notices, travel delays, visa complications. Then came the disinformation wave. A fake story appeared on 2 major news sites claiming Rihanna's Geneva documents were forged. The article cited an anonymous international inspector. But within hours, the inspector's photo was traced back to a stock image. By morning, fact-checkers debunked the entire article, revealing that it had been pushed by a PR firm once contracted by Behar. It didn't matter. The headline had already done its job. Confuse, distract, divide. Rihanna went silent. For 48 hours, no posts, no statements, no appearances. Speculation ran wild. Some claimed she was under arrest. Others suggested she was in hiding. News anchors argued whether she had gone too far. But on the third day, a tweet appeared. "You silenced journalists. I'm not one. I'm louder." It was followed by a location pin, Johannesburg. That night, thousands gathered. In Constitution Hill, former apartheid prison, now turned symbol of justice. On the steps, under spotlights, Rihanna walked alone toward a single microphone. She wore white. The crowd hushed as her voice echoed through the night air. "I'm not here for applause. I'm here because truth without protection becomes a target. So I brought receipts, and I brought backup." Behind her, giant screens lit up. They displayed the signatures of 22 whistleblowers, journalists, aid workers, auditors, local officials, each with testimony, each with proof, each with a face. One by one, the video statements rolled. A former USAID regional head admitting he was told to bury discrepancies. An Al Jazeera producer confirming that her senior was threatened after booking Rihanna. A UN consultant in Nairobi who revealed that entire aid routes had been directed by military interest, not humanitarian need. The final video stunned the world. Joy Behar, in a quiet room without makeup or studio lighting, she spoke directly into the camera. "I was handed the question minutes before the show. I was told to humiliate her. I agreed because I was afraid of losing everything. I stayed silent because I didn't think it would go this far. But when I saw what they did next, how they attacked her, froze her work, tried to ruin her name, I couldn't be part of it anymore." She paused. "Rihanna didn't embarrass me. I embarrassed myself." The crowd stood in stunned silence. Some wept. Others clapped slowly, unsure if it was real. The world didn't know whether to condemn Joy or commend her, but her confession blew open everything. By morning, global headlines read, "Talk show takedown was scripted." Behar confession confirms media-military collusion. Rihanna was right. Pressure mounted in parliaments, senates, and courtrooms across Europe, Africa, and South America. Lawmakers demanded independent audits of aid programs. The International Criminal Court received a formal petition backed by 12 nations. Rihanna, once a pop icon, had become something else entirely, a symbol of defiance, an unlikely dissident. That afternoon, her legal team filed a lawsuit in U.S. federal court against 3 contractors and StreamNow Media for defamation, obstruction, and unlawful coordination with federal agencies to suppress humanitarian reporting. But behind all the victories, danger still lurked. One of the whistleblowers went missing in Senegal. Kayla, Rihanna's publicist, discovered her emails were being monitored. Rihanna's legal counsel warned her, "They may come for you next," not with headlines, but with silence, freezing you out. Cutting off partners, shifting focus. Burying this under a new war, a new scandal, a new virus. Rihanna looked up and said quietly, "Then I'll speak louder than they can cover." That night, she live-streamed from her hotel balcony. She wore no mic, no makeup, no filters, just her voice. Truth isn't viral, it's dangerous. But it's ours now, and we don't give it back. Across the skyline, from rooftop to rooftop, came a wave of cell phone lights blinking in the night. An echo of a resistance that had begun with one ambush and was now carried by millions. History wasn't just watching. It had already chosen sides. Morning in Dakar arrived with a trembling stillness. The streets were waking up slowly, but the world was already roaring. Every front page across continents screamed the same story. In different tongues, the Rihanna leaks. Whistleblower vanishes in Senegal. UN demands independent tribunal on global aid corruption. By now, what had started as a televised smear campaign had shaken governments, paralyzed NGOs, and embarrassed intelligence agencies. Yet the real war hadn't ended, had only shifted. From the shadows of boardrooms and studio lights to encrypted chats. blackmail files, and diplomatic back channels in a secure room somewhere in Brussels, the International Criminal Courts. Chief prosecutor was reviewing the final petition, Rihanna et al. Versus Global Aid Interference Consortium, term just coined that grouped 3 American contractors, 2 lobby firms, and 5 proxy media platforms into a single entity. The evidence: thousands of documents, video confessions, traced wire transfers, and patterns that aligned too perfectly to be coincidence. The prosecutor leaned back in his chair and whispered, "She didn't just expose fraud. She cracked an empire." Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Rihanna's foundation headquarters had become a fortress. Armed guards stood at the gates. Inside, volunteers and attorneys worked side by side. Staff slept on couches. They were under surveillance, their networks probed by unknown IPs. But they kept going, preparing legal briefs, distributing emergency aid through trusted partners, and uploading open-source templates for citizens to audit local NGOs themselves. Rihanna, for her part, had vanished again. Only her closest team knew where she was. Not because she was hiding, but because the final move was hers alone to make. Then it happened. On a Sunday evening, the world's top news outlets were interrupted by a sudden coordinated broadcast. No network watermark. No breaking news graphic. Just a dark screen that slowly faded into Rihanna's face, calm, unshaken, seated in front of a single candle. She spoke slowly. For years they sold pain as opportunity, turned disaster into dollars. I was part of that system. I didn't see it at first, but now I do. And I'm not the only one. She paused. To those in power, this isn't about a foundation or a pop star. This is about the children who died in flooded camps while refrigerated food spoiled in locked containers. This is about the nurses who never got paid because someone funneled their salaries into offshore trusts. She leaned forward slightly. If you think we'll move on, if you still don't understand who we are? Then came the twist one no one saw coming. The screen shifted to show a grainy live feed. A hidden camera inside a private estate in Northern Virginia. Seated in a leather chair with a tumbler in his hand was Henry Clegg, former Deputy Director of Foreign Aid Logistics at the Department of State. In the background, a conversation was unfold, casual, damning. We knew they'd catch on. Eventually, Clegg said, unaware he was being recorded. The trick was always timing. Distract M with a celebrity scandal, leak half a truth, control the outrage cycle. Then a laugh. Another voice chimed in. What's next? Blame? The Russians. The camera cut out. Rihanna's voice returned. The footage you saw was captured legally by an internal whistleblower. His name is Deshaun Walters. He's worked security at that estate for 6 years. He turned over everything, every guest list, every recording. Within minutes, major networks confirmed the footage was authentic. Walters was already under protective asylum in Iceland. He had surrendered over 50 terabytes of footage, memos, contracts, evidence not only of corruption but deliberate orchestration, of global suffering for profit. Governments panicked. Several U.S. senators distanced themselves from contractors implicated in the footage. One resigned live on air. Investigations erupted in The Hague, London, Nairobi, and Sao Paulo. But not everyone was celebrating. That same night, Rihanna's publicist was nearly killed in what was reported as a vehicular malfunction on a winding road in the Alps. The brakes had been cut. Only her seatbelt and a patch of soft gravel saved her. A note was found tucked under her windshield. Stop feeding the fire. Rihanna, upon hearing the news, went silent for 6 hours. Then she called her legal team. Release the list, she said. And just like that, it hit the world like a shockwave. The list was a spreadsheet containing 67 names: politicians, journalists, executives, each linked by documents, emails, and timestamps to cover-ups, diversions, or participation in the aid exploitation racket. Some were powerful, others were surprisingly obscure, but each had played a role. Some were arrested within 48 hours. Others fled. Some simply vanished. The United Nations held an emergency vote to create an independent humanitarian justice tribunal. For the first time in its history, the ICC opened a war crimes investigation into non-military players involved in economic warfare through manipulated aid. Rihanna declined an invitation to join the tribunal. Instead, she created something else, the People's Ledger, open source platform, where citizens could track the flow of every public humanitarian dollar. She posted the link on her social media with just 3 words, "Never again unseen." The final image the world saw that week wasn't her face. It was a child in Ghanaian from the original photo now, older, smiling, standing in front of a rebuilt school with the words "Hope Rise" painted across the wall behind him. They'd tried to destroy her, discredit her, disappear her, but Rihanna never vanished. She became undeniable. The world would never be the same again.